Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching
You're watching Fanboy.
Fanboy,
A fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
God, I assume Tom.
We're the Monster Squad. Wolfman's Got Nards. We're the Monster
If you don't recognize that voice right there, you'll recognize his face. He played Sean in the Monster Squad. He's the director and one of the producers of the Wolfman's Got Nards, the documentary for the Monster Squad itself. Andre Gower, how are you, my man?
I'm doing good, RC. Thanks for having me. That was a fun little intro. Hopefully my voice sounds a little different than it does from back then. But
Well, you're not
who
11
knows?
anymore.
That's right. I don't know. We'll see.
Although you did hold up that Stephen King T-shirt throughout the documentary. That's one spoiler for you, that if you drop 20 pounds, you could fit in again.
Thank you for being generous with the 20.
Oh, man. The Wolfman's Got Nards, a great documentary about the making of and the following almost to like Trekkie level of dedication from the fans for the Monster Squad. How does that feel for you that you went around the world essentially for the 30th anniversary of this of this film, creating this documentary and seeing the effect that you had on kids like myself back then? Because I told you in our last interview for Baby Frankenstein that we drove our third grade teacher running around screaming Wolfman's Got Nards.
Yeah. And that's, we knew that was the focus of the documentary from before day one, really. And it all centers around the only reason that we're still talking about this movie, The Monster Squad, 30 some odd years later, is the fact that these fans connected with this movie and it impacted them in some way, shape, or form, and they didn't let it die. And then when they had the chance to come together 10, 12 years ago and, make something happen, it had this amazing resurgence. And that enabled me to go back out into the world as, the kid from the Monster Squad and meet all these awesome people and hear story after story of what this movie meant to these individuals. And, fast forward a couple of years after, continuing hearing these amazing stories, they didn't get old and they didn't get boring. They got deeper and more personal and more impactful. And that's where the idea for a documentary came from. And I wanted it to be about, let's turn the focus around on the reason why we're still talking about this movie and why we're signing autographs at a theater or a convention these days. It's these fans and it's their stories. And I knew their stories were a story. It hit me at one point and I said, that's something interesting because it's something unlike I'm seeing out there, with other genre films or other, pop culture, classics. And we love all the stuff that we love. I've never seen a fan base so connected, so impacted by just a singular film or a collection of things than Monster Squad fans are with Monster Squad. And I wanted to ask the questions why. And because it was fascinating to me. And boy, I got a lot more than I bargained for. And we had the result is Wolfman's Got Nards, a documentary.
Well, I love the documentary except for one thing and one thing only.
Okay.
Ryan Lambert. And I'll tell you why I'm mad at Ryan Lambert. And it's out of pure jealousy. So Ryan, if you're watching this is on you. You went from 80s teen Tiger B heartthrob to Silver Fox. Like, you didn't even have an awkward moment. Like, what was your
Right.
awkward moment? Like transitioning to formula as an infant, and that was the end of it? So no, it's out of pure jealousy. I don't like you. I never liked you. And that's the closest to a Don Rickles impersonation I can give you. But no, Ryan Lambert was awesome. And to ease my nerves, it always helps to remind me that he was in Kids Incorporated.
It always helps, doesn't it? And I think that's my favorite thing. And you know what, people, we all like to make fun about it. But I mean, he actually he likes Kids Incorporated. It's not the only thing, it's not the only thing he's done in his life. He's got Monster Squad, which, I mean, he's Rudy. I mean, damn it. He's the cool guy, right? But no, he's fantastic in the doc, and he and Ashley were a trooper, because we were going on these tours and traveling around, and I dragged them a lot more places than they probably would have normally gone or wanted to go. And it was very important to me that I wanted them involved in the doc, so everybody could see them and connect with them again, and they could connect with what we were trying to do. And boy, Ashley Bank and Ryan Lambert just are big parts of the documentary.
They're huge in the documentary. Ashley looks like she's just so happy to be away from her child at that point, which I'm absolutely teasing. But noticeably missing are Michael Faustino and Rob Kiger, Patrick and Eugene from the documentary. Were they just unavailable, or are they so far removed from acting at this point that it was kind of like, why would we be a part of something like this?
Honestly, it's a little bit of both. Michael actually got out of acting at a very young age after he'd already had, probably like an 8-year career, so he retired, when he was like 13 or so, I don't know. But he's actually he's a hardworking, very successful sound engineer in the entertainment industry. So he works on, giant shows like The Voice and America's Got Talent or American Idol and stuff like that. He does those big kind of live shows and concerts and stuff. So he's doing stuff that I have no idea how to do. He's a sound engineer. It's awesome.
So shows we've never heard of. I haven't
seen much of him. Huh?
Shows we've never heard of.
That's the shows we've never heard of. And Robbie had actually at the time was a no having any contact, not being able to get, no connection, no correspondence, no way to, kind of, get in touch with and make happen. And then, honestly, really with, the doc, if you're on camera, I would have loved to have them on camera because everybody wants to see them. Michael, for a little bit, that's not his thing right now. So, we didn't want to, push or press. And, Robbie we had no contact with him for a while. And really it was, it'd be interesting to hear those stories of what they thought. But what we do ended up having, we have a lot of people that were on camera that didn't even make the final cut of the documentary, because it ended up getting whittled down to, if you're on camera in this documentary telling your story and you had something to do with the movie, it had to, have some sort of impact, or you're involved with, kind of the current resurgence of it and comment on that. And I think everybody does a wonderful job of explaining, that dynamic from their perspective. I would have loved to have those two in it. It just didn't work out.
Well, it's unfortunate, but hey, there will probably be a Wolfman's Got Nards sequel at some point, and they'll be in there, or for the 40th anniversary reunion.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
I'm in. Look, there's still plenty of fans out there, and hopefully they'll be fans of this one. So now we make a doc of the doc.
Okay, so here's the big surprise, was that, for me at least, you got Matt Cardona, former Zack Ryder in the WWE and in AEW, to be in the documentary. Like, that just surprised me. That's spoiler number 2. We're not going to give away everybody's storyline in this. But I'm sitting there, I'm watching, and I was like, Zack Ryder just popped up in the Wolfman's Got Nards documentary. All right, this is going to be interesting. How do you get Matt involved?
I think we had met online, like on socials, and he was a huge fan, and so we just started kind of connect that way. And then we were Ryan and Ashley and I were going to a convention in Orlando called Spooky Empire. And I knew Matt I think he had just moved there or just bought a new place. And so he was based in Orlando. He was still Zack Ryder, WWE at the time. And I said, hey man, first of all, just come over to the convention, hang out if you have time, if you want to. Second of all, I'd love to sit you down and put you on camera and talk for the documentary. He was like, bro, I'm in for both. And I was like, let's do it. And we had never met face to face. And, he was one of the first people that we sat down and put on camera. And it's interesting because he's one of the only people we have exterior. Like, we have him outside, like at the hotel in Orlando. There's a water fountain behind him. And luckily the audio turned out good, but fit. and we're still pals. I'm getting ready to do his podcast like in a couple of days. He's just a great guy. And, like, we run to each other at like San Diego Comic-Con. He's a very busy guy though. He's got an unboxing show and all this stuff. He's very big, in literally and figuratively. And he's left me tickets for WWE before when he came in LA, and want to go ahead and hang out. So it was just one of those things that happened. I'm like, these are the type of people I want to show. It's not even a contrasting, and it's not even a juxtaposition of different types that are fans. If you're in the fan mode in this documentary, we're all the same, whether it's Matt Cardona, whether it's April Hooper from Phoenix, whether it's Sean Robert from Virginia, or Seth Green from every one of your favorite movies of all time. It's good. If you're talking about it, everybody's the same if you're on camera in this movie. Sans a couple people that pop in that are awesome faces and name, because they set up, chapters in the film or the overall context of what we're talking about. And, we even got, like Chuck Russell and Heather Langenkamp and, Zach Galligan, who just are awesome people to set up what genre is, what cult is, what fandom is, and then we let everybody else take it from there. But Matt's an awesome dude.
Well, speaking of Seth Green, you have another shade of green in there, and Adam Green with the Hatchet series, and he's a great guy. I talked to him a couple of years ago when Hatchet 3 came out, and so you have like legends in the horror industry that are still praising this, and people had forgotten that Shane Black had wrote this movie, and Fred Dekker was the director of this. Fred seems perplexed in the documentary about the post-success of the film from the home video market. He made the reference of it's like shooting a basket and waiting 20 years for it to land. And so, like, I'm not sure if he knows that he can enjoy it so many years later, or if he's still confused by the success afterwards. Because back then when we were kids, if the movie died in the theater, we never heard from it again, or, it'd be shown at like some Saturday afternoon thing or Sunday afternoon on Channel 5 or whatever local station would do it. And speaking to Fred about it, what's it like for him? Like, has he finally been able to wrap his head around the success of the franchise or the love for the film all the years later when it didn't hit in the box office?
Yeah, I think, the Fred story with the connection of he's the only one that has this particular relationship with, he's the only one that can have it. He wrote the story, he co-wrote the script with Shane, and he directed it. So your name's on it. And when it fails, that's on you, completely unfairly. I've never liked the fact, even back in the day, that box office numbers on your opening weekend are the only barometer of success for a movie. That just seems stupid to me, especially being involved with one of the bigger examples out there of a movie not doing well in a box office, but having a larger group of fans and followers and love his movie than you could ever possibly imagine. Fred's always loved the movie. He likes The Monster Way. He thinks it's a great movie and loves it. He didn't understand, or probably, and he says he didn't like the reaction that it got because no one went. And I think it's unfair, and it's not his fault. He made the movie that people dug and everybody connected with. That's his thing. For reviewers to not really like it, as a majority, and for, a studio to pull it, or theaters to be like, we're not getting anybody. That's not his fault. That has a lot more to do with timing of release, the rating it got, the reviews it upheld, the conflicted marketing campaign. So it's not his fault. And I don't think he ever assumed it was his fault. But it's something, I think it's unfair that you go into director jail for something like that. And I not just with Fred, but with other filmmakers that have gone into director jail for years and decades, we're the only ones that lose. I mean, they lose too, but look, the us as an audience as a whole, we lose because there's so many great creators and filmmakers and storytellers that they're still locked up in their jail cell, and yet we give other stuff to other people that may not be as good as they do, and we have to consume, that content. I'm not poo-pooing their success. I'm just saying it's kind of unfair. And watching kind of over the last couple of years, and then having Fred sit down and actually do something with the documentary, there was a time where that wasn't going to happen. We weren't sure if Fred was going to want to sit down and actually talk about what we wanted him to talk about. And it took a number of months. It took a number of time sending over some kind of edits and some short versions and some clips from what we had been shooting. And it got to the point where I think that he saw that what we were doing and the heart and the authenticity of what we were trying to do with the doc and the quality of what Henry and I and our production team were putting together. I think that, convinced him enough to, we got to go over to his house and sit down for almost an entire day. And he gets to sit there and tell a story. And as you can, it's a conflicted kind of relationship with it, but he's energized and he's enthusiastic and he's inspired to tell his story on camera. And that just really helps make this a complete documentary even better. It would have been a lot less of a movie if, without Fred's involvement and his openness to sit down and tell how he feels about it.
What it felt like to me with watching Fred is like a parent who has a child that's being bullied at school. Excuse me, I'm still getting over a cough. And you've made mention to it, and the administration has still done nothing about it, so you still feel like your hands are tied with it. So, but I mean, when he went on those tours and, sat in the theaters and saw the reaction, how did he handle it then? Because he's in the documentary with you guys doing that.
For some things, yeah. It's he wasn't on the 30th anniversary tour, but we've been to, kind of packed house screenings, and, sometimes, and he's been to conventions, and, and he's the only one that can kind of oscillate back and forth of maybe some bitterness or maybe some celebration or some, hey, where were you guys, 25 years ago, when this movie needed you. And I think we've gotten past that point of that kind of perspective. It's, hey, I understand that, because I had the same kind of feelings for a while. You understand it's like they're there and they're growing. And I personally, I'd rather really, it's neat. You can say this today because, it's a benefit to you, but I'd rather be part of something unique and dynamic like this Monster Squad resurgence and this fandom, and understand that these kids were always there. They just didn't know how to find each other until later on. And then when they did, wow, it went crazy. They lit Fred lit the fuse at that initial Alamo Draft House screening in 2006. He lit the fuse. He's the one who answered the question, where's our DVD? Where's the blue? He's like, you're not getting it unless it's you. You're the only reason it's going to happen. So write letters, send postcards, do something to make this happen. And you know what? They did. And that's because of Fred. Fred answered the question and told them what to do. And apparently they did it. And look what happened. I mean, that movie had a complete second life and a resurgence, found a new audience. We now have a second generation of fans because the originals are showing their kids now, because it's been so long that they have, 5, 6, 10, and 15-year-olds now. And it's just crazy, right? But I love the honesty and the fact that Fred felt comfortable enough to sit down with me and, with the crew and talk about it. I can't speak for him, any more than that. He's a great interview. Hit him up and talk to him about it. I'm sure he'd take some time and sit down and talk about all the cool things he's working on now, because over the last couple of years, it's been great to see Fred kind of have a resurgence of his own and, circling back and working with people. He got to, he co-wrote the screenplay with Shane for the latest for The Predator. Whether you like that movie or not, whatever, you can who cares? Like, that's a giant studio movie that Fred got to work on. That's awesome. And that led to other things that he's currently working on now. And what's great about the doc and the connection between all the people is, Henry McManus, who's, the filmmaker that, headed up the production team that helped me make this documentary. And it's really his, handiwork and everything here. He now collaborates with Fred on projects, and we all get to work together on things. And Fred became a Henry fan. And, so that kind of blew this kid named Henry's mind that used to be, a teenager, when he found this, VHS tape in a box upstairs in the attic that Monster Squad on it, and became a Monster Squad fan. So it's kind of these cool full circles, stories. And I love the fact that Fred's, working on awesome projects now, and kind of has, a fire lit under his world now as well. I'm not saying it's because of the doc. I'm saying it's just all this timing all happens to be happening at the same time, which I think is awesome.
Right. And for people who don't know who Henry McManus is, one of his most recent documentaries was the boy band con, the Lou Pearlman story. So if you were a fan of NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys and 98 Degrees and all the post New Kids on the Block boy bands that Lou Pearlman founded, Henry's a part of that. So there's your tie into Monster Squad and boy bands, thanks to Henry McManus.
But yeah, no, Henry's not only a very talented on the technical side of gear and filmmaking and editing. He's a very good storyteller. He's a good writer. He understands how to tell stories, how to make stories, and how to show stories. And I got extremely lucky to team up with him on this, because what we see on the screen with Wolfmans Got Nards is me throwing a bunch of ideas and setting up a bunch of stuff for Henry and our production team, like Wes and Aaron Kunkel and Shane Patterson, and just throwing a whole bunch of stuff at these guys. We have a very small production crew on this. I mean, it was a handful of people, four or five people physically making it, a couple of people afterwards, working behind the scenes, like Eric Lukowski and stuff like that, that just got so enthusiastic. And I loved this kind of little squad that we had to make this movie about the squad. And the doc is really me throwing out all this stuff and trying to get so much out there and in this, because I knew there's something there, and then having these guys make it happen and pull the essence of the story of what we were looking for out. It was just a great process and a really cool journey to go on. That sounds very filmmakery and lame, but it's true. It's an experience. It's a journey. It's a trip, in more definition of trip than one. And these guys just put their heart and soul into it, because they were all connected to it. They were all Monster Squad fans. They understood that dynamic. They weren't just guys that got assigned, and I don't think they ever felt like they were doing a job, working on this film. And they've all said that, which is kind of cool.
Well, that's a huge compliment in and of itself. But what I'd like to find out is, take us through the genesis of making the documentary. Was it 2006 when, Fred is sitting there and going, hey, you guys want the DVD, go ahead and write letters, and then you saw the letter campaign happening, the email campaign? Or was it, another moment like the 25th anniversary at San Diego, and you saw the reaction to everybody and everybody jumping in line to getting a signed poster and the Blu-ray signed and everything else going on? Like, what was the genesis of it all?
Really, the genesis is a culmination of all of that early stuff, right? It starts with the Alamo Draft House screening in 2006 that was put on by Eric Vespi, and of course the Alamo. There was one Alamo back then, and they found a 35 millimeter print. We didn't know what was going to happen that weekend. We sure as hell didn't expect to have two sold out screenings back to back the Saturday before Easter in April. They turned away people that couldn't get in, and so we just hung out and partied with him after, and that just lit the fuse. And then Fred mentioning, you guys got to write it. You want a DVD? It's gonna be your doing. That's gonna happen. So you guys get together and you figure it out, and you send letters. And then less than a year later, we're headlining a convention at Monster Mania, and we're like, what is happening? Like, how did this spark? Like, what's going on? And then we realized that Lionsgate's actually putting out a 20th anniversary DVD double disc thing, like that day. Like, no one told us. Like, Michael Felsher just showed up with a crew, was like, hey, we're doing your stuff. We're like, who are you? What is happening? And so all of that stuff built up, and then the DVD selling out, within a couple days, and then the second run in a couple days, and then it was out of print again. Everybody finally gets the Monster Squad on DVD, and then they can't get it because it's out of print again. So it just starts the cycle over again. And then a Blu-ray comes out, and then another Blu-ray, and we're going all over the country and all over into the UK doing conventions and appearances and, you know, screenings at cool art houses and cineplexes. But it was all that stuff leading up to hearing these stories from these fans over and over again of how this movie impacted them and why they connected with it on such a deep level that that will not fade. They will not let go, and how this movie shaped or changed their life or made them become who they are, or, you know, just something that this is always my go-to. This is my comfort blanket. This is something because it was the movie I saw with my dad, the first movie I saw with my dad, or the last movie I saw with my dad. You know, it's stories like that we kept hearing of. You know, I met my wife because of this movie. I named my kids after you. It was like, this doesn't happen normally. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of Luke Skywalkers out there because of Star Wars. Like, you know, a lot of people named their kid Luke. But you know, and that's a, you know, that's a weird thing to hear, but it's kind of awesome at the same time. So the genesis of the doc was realizing, after the cumulative effect of all these events and meeting all of these awesome fans and hearing these stories over and over again, they're all individual, they're all different, but they're all kind of the same. It's like something happened here. What is that? And these stories got more personal and more deep. And then I realized that those stories were a story. The genesis of the doc was not of, you know, we need a making of doc, or, you know, we need a where are they now doc. And I was like, no, nobody wants that. And we've sort of seen the making of doc in the double disc in 2007. And what it certainly isn't, and, you know, you can attest to this if we did it right or not, is it is not that here comes this spoonful of sugary nostalgia, you know, straight fan service doc, and then we bail out and we go home. That's not what this is. This is a story about those stories that ends up being a love letter back to the fans about their love letter of a life to this movie, and how it's all connected and how it can impact people, whether it's Monster Squad or not. It could be whatever film, because, you know, we work on that a little bit in the doc. It's not just Monster Squad centric. It's about whatever movie hit home for you and what's your comfort blanket movie and how did this movie change your life. You know, when you walked into that theater or rented it from the video store or, you know, recorded it off HBO, that's what the doc's about. I wanted to turn the lens around on the people that are the only reason that we're talking about this movie that failed in 87 in the box office, but didn't fail in the guts and the hearts and the brains of the kids that saw it. And they're the ones that kept it alive for 30 years. That's a story. And I wanted to tell their story. And I think we captured the essence of that as best we could.
No, you really did, because quite often a lot of the documentaries are fan service. A lot of it is like, here's the nostalgia train, choo, choo, choo. And, you know, all aboard. And, you know, you feel it for a while, but you'll never see it again. When you see these people's stories, like the guy who had every character tattooed on his arm, and then the final piece was you and Ryan actually inking him, which would have terrified the hell out of me. But I was just like, all right, cool, man. You know, if that's his thing. He got inked by two of the cast members. He got inked by Rudy and Sean. You know, it worked. And I think one thing that really resonated with everybody in this is because Fred and Shane were like 19 when they wrote the movie. So I
mean, you know, it seemed like, I think they were mid-20s, you know, when they first kind of, you know, or young 20s when they first broke the story. They were in college.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. But I think that's why it works. That's why it's different than all the other kids' movies of the 80s, because they weren't that far removed from what it was like to be a teenager in their neighborhood at the time. And they knew exactly what it was like and what it felt like and what it should sound and feel like and look like. And that's what I think was the main thing that connected with kids when they saw this movie, because it had heart and authenticity and it was a little bit of danger. You know, this is a kid's adventure movie that's got some serious shit going down in it. For sure. And, you know, we've actually got a body count. You know, it's nothing fantastic. It's a supernatural movie. It's monsters are real, and it's kids in peril. And that's always a like, but we got a lot of stuff packed into that Monster Squad story, and a family breaking up and disintegrating, and like a burned out dad, and bullying, and misfits finding their group, and learning how to get through junior high, and it has all the great stuff in there. I mean, there's so much packed in the Monster Squad, it's insane.
Oh, for sure.
Without even getting into the monsters, it's just the story is crazy. But I think that's what connected with kids. I think it was that heart and that authenticity and that danger, that the kids weren't serviced as being campy and being kid-like. They said, this is kids. And everybody said, that's me in my neighborhood. Yeah. That could be me. I'm going to go be that. And those are some of the stories you always heard. And I wanted to tell that.
And the language was real too. I mean, I was 9 years old when the movie came out, but you remember calling a kid, and excuse my language now as an adult, and especially in this generation, it's inappropriate, but you remember calling somebody a faggot as a pejorative. You remember calling somebody fat kid all the time, or all sorts of different phrases, like playing the game Smear the Queer, which nobody knew what the hell it meant, but that's what the game was called as kids. And then we grew up and like, that's what it was? No, it didn't.
That's not, you're like, wait a minute. But no, I mean, look,
that's how we talked in like 1987. So it fit, the time, and the language was real. It wasn't like some 50-year-old cigar chomper going, I think the kids sound like this today.
And you hit on the exact visual of what I always comment on. Usually when you have a kids ensemble story that's supposed to be fun or funny, and it's usually probably at least 30 to 35 to 65-year-old men trying to write and remember what it was like to be a funny kid. And he's like, well, let me see, Jimmy Durante used to say funny lines, let's he used to say this joke, and that's not going to land with anybody. Fred and Shane weren't that far removed, and look, they're still not. They're all pushing 60, and I'm pushing 50, and I think we're all still connected to our youth. And Shane still writes awesome stuff. Fred still writes awesome stuff that people super dig, and that's what lands, and that's what endures. And I think that's what's pretty special here. And I think we try to show a little of that with those two guys in this film as well.
And you did. And you could tell Shane still has love for this movie. It's still in his heart that like Monster Squad is one of his babies. I mean, yeah, he's known for Lethal Weapon. God knows his list of credits that we don't have time to go through till tomorrow. But you could see like Shane was so passionate about the film itself and the process of it. And Fred, like, again, being that father whose kid was bullied, but like, is heartbroken because he can't do anything to defend him, but he still loves his child more than anything, and will defend him as best he can. And then you guys in this, and then the fans, that 15-year-old girl in London who's just like, everyone tells me I should be modern. And she's like, no, I'm an 80s kid. And I'm like, you're 15. Yeah. What do you know about what we grew up with?
That's right.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite bits. And it's just because I think, like I said, the heart, the authenticity, the archetypes that are touched on and connect with people, and that relationship, whatever they connected with, whether it was with the monsters or with someone in the squad or a combination of the characters, that's what makes things last. And that's what means you have a good story, or something that you may not have been aiming for when you're typing on a page in 1985 or 86, when you're writing a first draft of a script. But boy, you hit it, and it happens. And those are the things, as writers or creatives, that you may hope for, but I don't think you can plan for that. Or, how do you write for that? And be like, I just wrote the line that's going to be iconic in 20 years. You're like, no, no one does that. And look at the other impacts that this movie had just with what was on the page. And I mean, we tried to come up with, a couple different titles for what the documentary would be if we were doing this documentary. And the only one that kind of came close was the Squad Doc, because it's kind of fun, it's modern, it's current, but that sounded like too much of a making of the documentary, or making of the movie type of documentary. And really, when it came down to it, the Wolfmans Got Nards says it. It says it all about why this movie connected with people, because it was something no one had ever said or heard before. And it became probably the most iconic line in the movie. It happens to be Brent Chalam's line. Yeah. He delivers a couple of the best ones in the movie, right? But then look, and then endures. I mean, it's Wolfman's Got Nards. It's on shirts, it's on hats, it's on it's on people's skin. It's in music, it's in videos. It's been said a bazillion times, and it's now a piece of written iconography. And then you even have something as crazy as something you're not planning for that. You're just writing a line of dialogue that you think is fun at the time. But then look at the Stephen King Rules shirt. That was just a screen direction and a screenplay that a costume designer has to go like, what do I have to go make? I have to go make a shirt and I have to iron on letters for this dorky kid. Like, oh, Steve, okay, great. And it's supposed to be a throwaway. It's just supposed to be a small character description of this kid named Sean, who, yes, he's 12 and reads Stephen King, and other kids think he's lame for it. But he's going to end up putting a group of people together that save your ass. But that shirt, who knew, no one thought, even when I wore that shirt, that was ever going to become what it became. And that's what's fascinating about the power of film, let alone writing and visual imagery, is because if you wrote the book that this kid wears the shirt, maybe becomes a thing. But to see that shirt and the golden yellow, the iron-on patches, everybody related to that, and they go, I want that. And lo and behold, they started making their own damn Stephen King Rules shirts. And not only do they make their own, but brands have made it. Companies have put it out. You see the conventions. I had some for a while that people had given to me, and I would turn around and give out. But then people started reimagining the Stephen King Rules shirt. So when you start making the Stephen King, a different shirt based on the Stephen King, that means you have something iconic. Because now there's other people rules, it's other things rule, it's different colors. Like people are making their own, like I've seen black and purple ones. I've seen, green and yellow. It doesn't matter. I've seen gray and blue ones. It doesn't matter if it's an exact copy. It's become something bigger than itself. And who can plan for that? That's the power. That's the power of good stories and good movies.
And has there been a reaction that you know of from Stephen King at all?
I think people have hit him up way back in the day. I don't know if he's ever seen the movie. I don't know. He may have or may not. He may not like it. Who knows? Look, it's Stephen King. The movie may be too short for him.
Probably.
It's only 82 minutes. And, his introductory paragraph to a book is about 82 minutes. It may not be his bailiwick.
Right. Who owns the rights to the movie now? Is it Lionsgate that owns the rights, or is it Warner Brothers, or is it just out in the ether?
It's sort of all of that answer and above. I believe right now, if I'm correct, because we had to deal with Paramount, we had to be with Viacom for stuff dealing with the documentary. It's always been a rights issue with Monster Squad. Why isn't there a remake or a reboot? And they were working on that for a while. And Rob Cohen and Michael Bay were remaking the Monster Squad for about 5 years, and that ended up not happening. And, why isn't there merch? Why isn't there an animated series? There's so much to do with IP. Now that everything and every brand and every studio wants franchisable IP, there's a giant franchisable IP here. If you think about all the connection things you could do here that aren't necessarily tied down with anything. I love the pre-story to what, to our story. There's so much you could do after the fact. And I know Fred's always wanted to do graphic novels and comics on Monster Squad, or even with our generation of kids, or the next, or the one previous, or whatever. There's so much to tell there. It's always been a rights issue. I think right now, if you ask who owns the rights, someone will say we do. I don't know if they can actually provide evidence of that. I don't know. It's always this thing. So hopefully, in the next year or so, maybe that, answer will get changed, and people get to make cool stuff, around, story that people dig.
Okay, then pitch idea.
Okay.
And as we know, I have no power whatsoever in Hollywood, except for the cool people that I get to interview. But you've heard of Legion M, because they make a lot of fan-based movies and fan-funded movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I've interviewed the president, the CEO, and the COO of Legion M. If we put you in contact with them and come up with an idea for a Monster Squad sequel, maybe they could help get the rights, and we get Monster Squad 2, Daughters of Destruction. And now, because they're, hey, Dracula's gone for another 60 years at this point, 65 years, but nobody knows where one or 70 of his daughters are. So,
see, now you're thinking like a multi-layered story conceptualizer. On two different levels, on the business side of it and on the creative side. Look, I've met some of those Legion M guys, and I love that company. I think they do cool stuff. It was a great idea. Whether it's them or some, I'll always have a conversation with somebody, even if it has nothing to do with Monster Squad. Love to. So if, put me together with them, I'll go sit down and have a masked up tea, with whomever. I think there is a cool, if we're talking about sequels, since you mentioned it, I think there's some cool stories out there that could service that itch. It would have to be done right. It would have to be done, with the right people. And I think Fred and Shane would need to be involved if it was going to be authentic and come from the source. I always, I tell some people sometimes, like, look, right now there's a really cool sequel story that's on a laptop that was written a couple of years ago, during this kind of overtime, during this resurgence and meeting these fans, and, well before the documentary, actually became a thing and then got made. And then, but it's been tweaked, and it's a pretty neat story. And I think what you do if you were making a sequel, by the way, that laptop is this one right here that I'm pointing at. Just in case anybody was wondering, I think it's pretty obvious. But it had nothing to do with being selfish. It had to do with being selfish of protecting the story. And if anybody was ever going to make a sequel to anything, let alone something like Monster Squad, especially in this case, I think you'd have to have the opposite mentality of studios and not worry about that giant wide audience and service the core fan base first and honor them first and foremost. You'll get a wider audience just because you make something good, but it's usually opposite of that. They're like, what's the widest audience we can get with whatever? Like, who do we need in it? Okay, great. Let's do that. Let's put this thing in. And we need some flashbangs and some zippity doos and some, is Tom Cruise available? Let's put him in there. That's great. Who's hot right now? What's her name? I don't care. Get her, whatever. Let's find out, because it gets eyeballs. What's the story? Doesn't matter. We have zippity doos and Swiss mangs and Tom Cruise. It doesn't make a successful movie. And it dishonors your fan base. And that's sort of,
suggested Legion M because of the way they did Jane Silent Bob reboot. And
yes.
Then Mandy was crowdfunded, and that had a huge, out of nowhere, Nicolas Cage just box office boom. So I was like, well,
and
maybe
yet again, he
comes
out of nowhere.
Right.
Yeah, no, and that's, I was getting to, sort of that kind of fan-centric, kind of connection there, which, when you're a part of something or, even, have a connection to it, then it means even more. And then, that it's not just kind of this cold fish that gets served on a plate. You were in the kitchen, kind of, watching it being made, or even, flipping the pan. And those are great ideas. And who knows? I'm not in charge of that. I would, I'd love to be, I'd love to be involved in something that's cool, but if it happens, they've got to invite me. And, but there's a really, really cool story. That's a framework there that, I'd love to sit down with the guys, and the guys being, Fred and Shane. Just, I've never sat down and told them it, but we've alluded at it sometimes and talked about it. We just haven't sat down and done it, because it's about it takes about 35 minutes. And because I literally go like, kind of like scene for scene. I don't go shot for shot because it's not a screenplay. I go kind of like chapter by chapter.
Well, please invite me to that pitch meeting, because this I got to hear.
Oh yeah, I'd love. Or we do it private. I'll tell you, it's.
I'll sign an NDA. It's all right.
I've actually had that done when I talk to people. It sounds icky, but you got to do it.
No,
but no, I think a sequel and a story. I love prequels. I think the story. I think there's so much fun here. Look, Dracula was walking around for 100 years because he got foiled in 1887. But he kind of won, but he didn't. He just didn't get killed. He made it out. So he's been walking around for 100 years, and then a bunch of kids get in his way. That's why he's so pissed in our movie. Like, I think that's why Dracula's so mad, because he's like, I've been waiting 100 years. Who are these meddling kids in my way? You know what?
Right. The Scooby-Doo gang shows up.
Yeah. Here's some here's some dynamite for you, and have fun in your treehouse when I blow it to smithereens. And then now I can go on with my business. I've been waiting, 99.9 years to make happen. And then we foil it for him. What was he doing in the 50s or like the 1920s or like, those are great stories. I like to think he was like hanging out during the Panama Canal being built, and that's where he got his dynamite. He just stole the bag from that or something. He's been carrying it around or put in a storage locker, in Van Nuys for 70 years or something. And who knows? I got 70 brides or whatever, and other legions of demon-like or monsters that he can call from. But the first time he just the only ones that were available in 87 were the crew that we got, and he's like, I should have called the other team, something, because these guys, and that traitor Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster. Yeah, they always correct me on that one.
But you can bring back the monster's bride. You can bring, you could bring in a she-wolf at some point.
Like I said, RC, there's a cool story on a page.
I know,
like you gotta, go deeper. There's some good stuff there.
Yeah.
But no, I think if you're doing something like a sequel, I think a remake fails. If you're doing, because you can't remake this movie. If you're going to do a movie with a bunch of kids and monsters or demons or whatever, like we've seen it, like don't call it Monsters Squad. Just create something cool and put it out and call it something else. Because I think it would land short, and I think the fans would be not happy. A continuing story, a prequel, definitely a sequel. If we're involved in it or not, that would be rad. I think it also obviously has to be a passing of the torch type scenario, because now your story can continue to go on. And I think the power of our movie was the fact that the kids were the only ones that knew what was going on, the only ones that knew how to defeat it, and the only ones that had the balls to step up and do it. And I think that would carry on, in further stories. And like I said, there's a great story written on it. But
like I even see like in the like the opening of the trailer is Rudy opens the door, realizes it's you, goes nope, and closes the door. And like that's just the beginning of the trailer, and then from there on goes the rest of the adventure.
That's right. There's a little of that there, especially in the in the fun thing that I'm alluding to.
But we have to shave Ryan's head. That's
you don't have to. Time is doing that.
No, come on. I saw that Silver Fox thing, man. Come on. That's unfair.
We only shot him from the front.
Oh, okay. Whereas I blow out both my knees and ankles and get fat from all the years of combat sports. Here's Ryan looking like $1 million.
Yeah, but you know what? Ryan Lambert always has been and always will be just fucking cool. So it doesn't matter, right? He can sit there and not even give a rep and be like, yeah, he still got it. And I've got plenty of photos and video to prove it. But yeah, there's some fun stuff, that you can do with it. And Rudy's probably a little different than you thought he'd grow up to be. And, actually in this story, there's it open, you're talking about opening, it opens up and it gets very real, and it gets very real very quickly. And, it services sort of, a tribute to Brent and the character of Horace. And, and then it gets real very quick. And I think that would be awesome, because I think that sets, what a great cold open that I haven't explained to you yet.
Well, you did make us cry in the documentary with revealing how Brent passes away and how it was an avoidable situation that just like left everybody a wreck. I mean, as fans of the film and remembering Brent and other things that he did, commercials and stuff, like you could see that he was a real chipper, happy kid. Mm. And even like his early adulthood photos, you could just see that he's beaming with happiness.
Yeah.
And, you talk to his ex-girlfriend and you talk to her mom and the family and everything else, and just what they lost makes us cry for them and feel for them. How difficult was it filming those stories? And were you told anything that you felt was either too personal to share about Brent from that perspective, or something that they had shared and said, you know what, let's pull back a little bit, we shouldn't really like reveal that aspect?
Not really on, did we get anything that we didn't think we should use or reveal? We were very, very aware that this was their story to tell. No one else can tell it Could I have sat in my chair in my, corny interview setup, in the movie and explain the Brent story? Yeah, I sure could have. Could Ryan? Yeah. Could Ashley? Absolutely. Should we have? No. It's not our story to tell. Unfortunately, Brent passed way too young. He was just ready to go to law school. And unfortunately, his mom, Betty, passed years before, actually even before he passed. And then his dad, died, shortly after. So there was no more of his immediate family to get the story from that we known about. But we had gotten in touch with, like you said, Rachel, who, was a lifelong friend and girlfriend of Brent's, during their teenage years, and her mom, and Barbara, who was another family friend. It's, you grow up in a community and you have your friends, and your friends' parents are kind of your pseudo parents, your step parents, if you will. And they're the ones that knew him the best and knew him the longest. And so I thought that they're the ones that should tell the story. And they were amazed that someone was calling to talk about Monster Squad, 30 years later, let alone to explain, because they didn't really know the resurgence that much. And, because these are older grandmas, they're not on the Twitter at the Comic-Cons. And we just sat them down and got comfortable, and they told the story and their experience of growing up with Brent. And, you said it best. It's like, you can't look at him without seeing like just kind of this, awesome, happy energy, coming out of this human being. And it shows that in Monster Squad too, that's not an act. I mean, that's just Brent. And, to grow up and end up passing away at a young age is obviously, it's tragic. But, you mentioned a little bit, and like I said, I don't get too much into it. I let people watch it and understand it and let that family tell the story. When you look at it, it didn't have to happen. It wasn't, an unavoidable thing. That really hits you in the gut. And it's tragic that he's not around, obviously, anymore. But to go back and be like, but he could be. It makes it even more, sorrowful, because he's everybody's favorite character. Yeah, Rudy's the cool kid. He's bitching. Sean's the leader and put the band together and tells everybody what to do. And Phoebe's the hero of the story. We get that. That's amazing. Our 5-year-old girl is the hero of our story. But man, let me tell you, Horace is everybody's favorite character, because a lot of people relate to Horace, and he's got the best character arc in the movie. And he comes up and, he's the one that literally gets beaten down in the movie, and he's the only one, he's one of the only ones that stands up at the end. And that made an impact on kids. And the fact that Brent, who played Horace, can't meet the fans today, that's a loss on both sides, because I understand what it feels to be in front of these fans or a theater full of audience and just get that love and that energy. It's amazing. I want him to experience that, but he can't. And I want the fans to meet Brent, and they can't. And I don't know what to do with that. And so I basically just say, when people, I was like, I can't change that. Could I, or would, if I, damn right I would, because I want both of those to experience what's been going on the last 10 or 12 years. We can't. How do we acknowledge that? How do we service it? We treaded very lightly, getting in that, but with purpose, because we wanted to show everybody. And it's one of the most impactful parts of the documentary.
And it's a gut punch, because like we said, we find out that he could have been around for a lot longer, and it was avoidable. And I'm going to clear up any misconception, and I don't care if this is a spoiler. It was not a drug overdose. If anyone's like, because people jump
correct.
to automatically like,
yes.
Oh, it could have been this. It might have been a drug overdose. It could have been suicide. It could have been this. It's none of that.
Completely opposite from all of that. Yes.
Yeah. So please don't think that any of that happened to Brent. It was none of that. It was just something medical that could have been avoided. And that's
right.
That's what we're going to leave it with for everybody to watch, because I know how people are, and they're like, Oh, well, he died young, and they don't want to say how. Overdose, suicide,
Yeah, right.
AIDS, cancer. Like,
Yeah.
they'll go to like the
Not what
worst
happened.
extremes. And those are
Yeah.
horrible ways to die. But the way Brent died is a gut punch because it shouldn't have happened that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I want to clear up for everybody that's going to have a misconception if they don't actually watch the documentary, which they should.
Yeah, no, good call. Thanks, RC, for pointing that out. And that's absolutely accurate. And yeah, I don't, let's not, that's one of the lesser lighter notes, but so we'll absorb that, and then we'll move on to lighter tones and more fun. But
okay, here's a lighter tone, man. You
Yeah.
are a happily married man, which I am a bit jealous of and commend you for, because still single, but I'm enjoying it actually, because I can leave a cup on the counter and realize that I'm the one that left it there and not wonder what the hell happened to anything. Two things in regards to your wife. The first time she saw Monster Squad, and then how her reaction was with you making the documentary, because making a documentary isn't easy and it can be taxing on a relationship. They say like marriages struggle through home remodels, finances, and in this case, if you're in the arts, making a documentary.
Oh, that's like a triumvirate of well, let me tell you, we've done all three. And she's still a trooper. So she had seen the Monster Squad, she had known about it, obviously, and then we met and we ended up dating, living in different states for years, and then we've been married for, I don't even know, 11 years now. Yeah, I think it's 11 years. She's pretty rad. She doesn't give me any slack, nor should she. She's super intelligent. She's super creative. I've leaned on her for, a lot of help with, during stuff, if it's just feedback or ideas. Hell, she was the force of inspiration, or that's a nice way of saying, you guys should be doing this podcast. And that finally got Ryan and I off our asses do a podcast. And then I'll be damned, she didn't produce it and do all the technical shit involved with it and knocked it out of the park. And then she tried to show me how to do it so I could take it over. I was like, you're way too good at this. She's a very creative but intelligent person, understands both sides of the game, and very ahead of the game in marketing and things like that. So she understands what's going on with this, but she's also not the type of individual that, is like, who left this cup here, or, get out of, my house. And we have a very awesome kind of unique relationship where we're a good duo, and boy, we can sit in the same room and be within 10 feet of each other for hours at a time and not get tired of each other. And then we can also just go on and do our own things for an entire day and not see each other. And it's not a bad thing. It's, it's very interesting. And then when you're traveling a lot and doing, look, I guarantee you, she enjoys when I'm gone more than when I'm at home, or we're in the same space. But, she's like, oh, you're going to make a document? Have fun. Bye. It's like, that's awesome, because we're here with the cat and I've got my computer and my shows and my big T, and like, I'm great. Call me from the road. But no, she was extremely supportive. She helped me out at the very beginning of it with some creative stuff and, getting the deal done. And she actually made my pitch deck for the doc, and it's fucking amazing. And I've asked her to, help with other stuff like pitch deck. And she's like, you can't afford me. I was like, I know I can't. Your work's too good. I definitely can't afford you. For your skill in what you do, I certainly can't. It's like you would be she's way too creative and way too good at what she does to even think about putting a dollar amount on it. But she's been extremely supportive, and she celebrates it. And, she's a fan in a different way. She likes to see, all of us succeed in this endeavor. Whether it was another show of mine or whether it was Short Ends that, I created and Ryan and I, co-hosted, and we got to celebrate shorts and short films and short filmmakers. I mean, not filmmakers that are not tall, but they make shorts. And then the doc was a giant endeavor that took us we made this doc in a very short amount of time. There's a lot packed in there. From starting cameras rolling to our first film festival was right at 12 months. which seems very, very short when we tell people that have ever endured in making a documentary. We crammed 50 terabytes of footage, whittled it down to 90 minutes, and festivaled at our first festival within a year of our first day of camera rolling. And that's just a testament to Henry and the crew and all these, because we were editing in real time, but we were creating a documentary in a new type of way. Like, you know, and this doesn't play like a documentary, it plays like a narrative kind of story. And that's all these guys, you know, we were cutting in real time as we were on the road. Wes Caldwell and Aaron, you know, and Henry, they're in the back of a minivan or in the back of an airplane actually doing cuts, selects, because we have to get this done because we're on the road. We got to dump cards and get them cleared. So what are we going to keep and transfer over to a hard drive? And made the movie as we shot it. And then Henry went in a room and put it all together after, you know, in a couple of months, and it just came out amazing.
That's unheard
but she
of.
loves to, you know, we're still talking about my wife, you know, she loves to see all of the crew and the guys that were involved in this. We're all pals, we're all friends, we support each other, and you know, and I think we're all happy that the movie's finally coming out, because we had a little bit of a delay.
Having it done in 12 months and in a festival all at once is completely unheard of. Like,
oh, it was insane.
Yeah, it sounds
absolutely
like
insane. And look, to shoot that much footage, because we had multiple cameras rolling and we were on the road constantly or in the studio doing stuff literally every week for 10 months. And you know, even we were still shooting stuff at the very, very end to plug in at the final kind of, you know, version of it. It's insane.
Well, beyond the insanity and leaving me at a loss for words, I have to ask, you did 17 days in a row. I think 17 days in a row or 17 days in a month.
That on the 30th anniversary Alamo Draft House tour, which we didn't know was happening when we started development and production of the documentary. I had ended up putting that together with the Alamo kind of after the fact. So fortunate that ended up happening, because it became a major event that we also got to document. And that wasn't on the original kind of list of things that was going to happen. And boy, am I glad it did. But yeah, that was 17 days. It was 17 cities in 17 days. We started in San Francisco and ended in Virginia. And it was planes, trains, and automobiles. And when we say 17 cities in 17 days, that's a crazy schedule. But it wasn't just one screening a night. Half of those had multiple screenings. So we had to do an intro, show the movie, do the Q&A, go outside, the new theater comes in, do the second Q&A, do the thing, and then go out in the lobby and sign for and it was constant. Wow. And about half of the locations, at least half of the locations had more than one screening. So we were showing we had 17 cities, but we had 25 or 26 shows in 17 days. It was like a crazy rock tour with Ryan, Ashley, and I, and Ashley's 16-month-old baby in tow for the entire 17 days, which was awesome. And we just made it happen. We just made it work. At the same time, I had the production crew with us following us everywhere on that tour and shooting awesome things. And you know, you can't script that. We just got great stuff. You just never know what's going to happen.
Like it sounds fun in concept, but we're both in our 40s now. So in our 20s, it would have felt like nothing. Is it like
yes.
You get to like day 13 and you're like, okay, we're in Chicago, for example.
Yeah. You got to make sure.
Yeah. You know, you don't want to have one of those Spinal Tap, hello Cleveland moments.
That's right.
But you know,
what city am I?
Right. And you get there and you realize that it's a triple feature at this point. Like how was the excitement still there? And how are you not just completely running on fumes and wanting a nap?
Well, that's not necessarily untrue with all of that. That's all true. You are running on fumes. You do have that Cleveland moment every once in a while. But I can go in task mode and kind of, you know, get through all of that. Ryan and Ashley's baby, I mean, you know, I just super appreciate that they, one, wanted to go on that tour, and two, that they allowed, you know, cameras and microphones to be stuck to them every day. all day almost, and cameras following him around for 3 weeks straight while we're trying to travel and go through airports and being chased by Hurricane Harvey for 4 days. And then, so yeah, do you need a nap? Yep, you sure do. Do you get your nap? Nope, not really. Because some of those times we had to go to the theater early to get ready or just to eat. But we also had to like everybody on that tour that went to the theater got a signed mini poster. This is the 30th anniversary tour. So the Alamos reprinted like the Australian one sheet because it's the only poster Phoebe's on for some reason. And so we'd have to go like, okay, we're in Dallas. How many tickets? And they're like, well, right now we're at 208. So we have to sit there and sign 208 posters because everybody that came in gets one. And then like, actually we just add another 20 more. So like, okay, so we had to do that for an hour or 2 hours before every show and then eat dinner and then go do the intro Q&A. Your only downtimes when they're playing the movie, unless it's overlapping in two different theaters and you're doing the Q&A over here and you just did the intro over here. It was insane. And then of course I had the crew with me. So I had to turn off the appearance kind of, button and go into like producer and director mode and deal with the guys and let them, kind of say, this is what we need today. Let's do this. What can happen? But the freshness of it, Ashley and Ryan, and I'll include myself in it, we find a way somewhere to be really good at being fresh and energetic, because over the years, and this is the inspiration for the documentary, is we understand what it means to these fans. And even when you're at a convention, you've got 15, 20 people lining up, waiting in line to meet you and take a photograph. By the time you get to person 15 and there's like 6, I'm like, no, I can take a break after this person because there's no one there. But when you get to 13, 14, 15, you can't slack off. That might be your 13th person in the last 25 or 30 minutes, but this is the first time that person's meeting you. And we figured out or realized years ago that you shouldn't and you couldn't and you can't really slack off because it's fresh. It should be a fresh experience, and we don't get to spend enough time with the fans one-on-one than we do. If all you've got is 90 seconds or 3 minutes, it needs to be a good 90 seconds or a good 3 minutes. And I think all three of us and the rest of look, Ashley and Ryan were troopers over the convention years and the appearances, and definitely on this tour, of doing just that because they knew what it meant to these fans. There wasn't any sort of like, obligation to me or, kind of, contractual thing like being in the documentary. It wasn't like that. They enjoy that interaction and they are awesome with the fans and the fans are awesome with us. And you just make it new every time that someone comes up to you. It's a new experience for them. So it's a new experience for you. And, I get a little annoyed at, celebrities or actors or, whomever's doing stuff. If you're doing an appearance and you just have no energy and you don't want to be there, then don't be there. Because if you're not trying to make that experience for that next person as new as it was for the first person, then you're doing it wrong. That's just how I feel. I could be completely wrong, but I think Ryan and Ashley feel the same way. We try to knock it out as a group, as a squad, and I think it works. And it shows in the doc because that was 17 cities in 17 days. Yeah, but that was more than one show every night, and we had to get up and boogie the next morning and go to the next state or the next town. And sometimes we're on an airplane, sometimes we're on a train, sometimes we're in a minivan. And like I said, being chased by Hurricane Harvey all through the Texas swing. And then you get crazy ideas from the director of this documentary. And I knock on, the producer and main filmmaker's door, Henry, and the director goes, "Hey man, wouldn't it be great? We're in Corpus Christi. The Gulf of Mexico is right here. Let's get up at sunrise and see if we can get a sunrise shot coming up over the water of the Gulf of Mexico." And Henry's like, "Great idea. Let's do it." I really want to go to sleep, but let's go do it. So he and I got in the car. We woke up at like 4:30 in the morning, drove down to the coast, found a spot, chose a different one, moved. I thought we were going to miss it. And Henry pulls out the gear. We get the tripod. We bring the camera over there, make sure we don't drop it in the water. And we set up out on this little rocky point and waited and put the stop motion on and put the regular on and be like, and I'll tell you, that's one of my favorite things in the doc is because we got up in the morning and saw that sunrise shot and we ended up using it in a perfect situation in the story, and it's beautiful. And I'm like, if we could have been tired and said we don't need that'd been neat, but we're too tired. That pays off right there. And I mean, there was a cloud on the horizon that, like, apparently someone called central casting and got the perfect cloud and put it right out there for us. Little did we know that was like the beginning of, like, a nice little hurricane coming. Right. But because Corpus got hit the next day while we were in, I think, Laredo, and then we went up to San Antonio, and it was and then we got hit with it when we ended up in Austin. But we were just in Houston. And then went from Houston to Corpus Christi, Laredo, San Antonio, New Braunfels, then Austin, and that was the Texas swing. And then we were supposed to fly out of Austin, but we couldn't because the weather was so bad that we had to drive to Dallas. And so I drove the minivan with everybody in it out in the outer bands of Hurricane Harvey, like this, for 3.5 hours, about to hydroplane off the highway, and with the crew behind us, and it was crazy.
Wow. There's one more thing I wish that you had put in the documentary, and there's one fan whose name slips my mind at this point, but he's basically a historian, and he has copies of Monster Squad in multiple languages.
Sean Robert.
Thank you. And what I would have loved to have been able to see, if the videos were playable, or the VHS cassettes were playable, is to hear you and Brett say "kick him in the nards" and "the Wolfman have nards" in, like, French, Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, so on and so forth, from that collection.
You are correct. That would have been a great supercut to put together. I don't know if Sean would have let us have all his collection to actually run through a machine, but he probably would have, because he's honestly one of the individuals of why there's not only a doc but so much cool stuff out there, because he's been very active and has this collection, and he's always just been a huge supporter. And then he started collecting stuff, and his big collectible thing is he wanted a dead media from every country that I played in, and he's almost got it. He may be done now, but he searches and finds them all the time. And yeah, that's a great collection. He's a great person. And then talking about tours, we finished the doc, we did our festival run, ended in October of last year, and I set up another Alamo Draft House tour just with the documentary. It was supposed to be the announcement of the deal and the distribution thing of the previous deal that actually didn't happen, and so that's where the big delay is. And we got to we went to 22 cities with the doc in 22 days. So I just repeated, and Henry went with me on that one. So we just kind of recreated it almost. We went to some of the same Alamos and went to a couple different ones. But what was cool is we got to show Sean Robert and Sean Dekker when we were on the other tour, and we went to the house, and they got to see the movie in a theater with everybody, and that made it special for them too. But yeah, I think you're right. That'd have been a great thing. Maybe Sean will pull those things out and make his own supercut of Le Wolfman's Got the Bulls or something, whatever it's going to be in French and German and I love his Israeli VHS. He's got like one from, he's got Turkey. I mean, he's got them from all over the place. It's insane. It's awesome.
That would be a fantastic supercut. Yeah. With all of that, like, okay, so, I've talked to Trekkies. I've been to the Star Trek conventions. I've talked to cast members from various Star Trek properties. Of everybody that either was featured or not featured in the documentary, who stood out the most to you, and who came the furthest to the London screening, and who also followed you the most to the most cities in the 17 days?
I know there was a couple people that went multiples. Who stood out that's in the doc as we met them and went around? I mean, we had known Sean prior, and so weaving him into the doc was just a no-brainer. So that was a given, but we didn't know what a great interview we would get, and he was very nervous to be on camera because that's not his thing. But we invaded his house and went up in his room, and so Sean, that's a given. I would probably say the thing that probably surprised us the most was Sean Dekker's story, and we actually met him on the very last day of the 17 city tour, the 30th anniversary. And he was in a line of probably 185 people after the screening in the Winchester Alamo, which is one of the raddest, Alamos. I love those guys up there. And he came up and shook hands, got a photo, signing stuff, and told me his story. And I misheard his story, either because I was exhausted or I wasn't paying attention like I should be. But I listened to it, and I stopped him at the end. I went, wait a minute. Tell me that again. What did you just tell me? And he told me again, and I'm holding up the line, I'm waiting, and I'm like, I said, that's a very personal story. Would you have any interest in sharing that on camera? And he's like, for your documentary? Because we announced that we were doing a documentary on that tour. And he said, I would love to tell you my story on camera. And so I said, guys, hang on a minute. I'll be right back. And Henry and the crew, they had put all the gear away. This was the end of the night. It was done. I said, Henry, you've got to pull the camera back out. And this is Sean. He's got a great story. And you got to take him around it while I finish the rest of these people. He's got a story to tell. We need it on camera. And I didn't know how that was going to impact those guys, but they weren't ready for the story that they were about to get told. And I didn't even really absorb it until I saw it later. And I was like, but now we're friends with Sean Dekker. And his story is very personal. I don't want to give it away. I want him to tell his story. I want people to see it in the doc. It's not a shameless, like, not going to show it to you, reveal anything. It's his story to tell. It's one thing that I've become very aware of, that I want people to tell their stories because it's theirs to tell. I don't need to be a third party, resubmitter of something. And it's super personal. It's super touching. It's probably one of the things, like you asked, that surprised us the most, because we weren't expecting, one, to meet this awesome dude, but to also hear his story about when he was 14 years old, what happened to him and how this movie helped him through that time. And you're not going to be ready for it. You're not going to guess it, unless you've seen it. And it's touching and it's heartwarming. And he's an awesome dude. And we're pals to this day. And I'm glad we get to share this experience with him, because he shared his experience with us, and it's not an either or, a one benefits from the other side. It just worked, and he's a part of the fabric of this story now, and I think he enjoys that. I think coming from the furthest, oh man, I know people who drive from states away or take the train to come in. I know when we were in London, we had a group of guys from Scotland come down for the screening, which is, not close. I do know, boy, there's a handful of people that drive 2-3 states away just to, come to the screening and get a picture and tell you their story, which was just fascinating. And then I got to tell you, one of they're good friends of ours now, which is what's cool. But one of my favorite people on the planet is April Hooper and her husband, Matt, who I get to see in a couple of weeks, actually, hopefully. And they live in Phoenix. And we met just off this weird kind of chance. It had nothing Monster Squad related. And then we just became friends. And she's on camera in the doc telling her story. So it was a whole bunch of things, like this was something that was set up out of the blue, that we wanted. That's what these fans are about, and that's what the story's about. And I love the Hoopers, and I love the Sean Dekkers, and I love the Sean Roberts, and I love the it's Christina Marie. That's her great handle, because she does this awesome cosplay stuff to hear her story when we met when she was a teenager, and that was a number of years ago, and her family story, and stuff like Danny Foster, getting inked, with all the monsters, and Ryan and I, having, get a chance to partake in that. You're not going to hurt Danny Foster or his feelings. That dude's too hardcore and badass. But, we got to drive, we went on a long trip to go to his house. He lives up in a Tascadero area, and that's like 3 hours and change. So I had to lug the crew up there and go sit in his garage and do his, document his story. And, that's just kind of what it is. That's what these fans are. And, we'll drive to you and they drive to us, and it just works. And it's just unique. And I don't know of anything else really kind of like it.
Right.
And I'm just glad I'm a part of it.
And even if you did screw up a line on Danny, now he's got a story of, he's like, this is where Andre Gower screwed up the line on the Gill Man right here.
That's right. That's right. So I add to the list of my, multi hyphenates. I am also now an accomplished tattoo artist. Not in any way, shape, or form.
With the documentary, you're one of the executive producers, you're the director, and you're one of the stars that's making a visual love letter to the fans and the franchise itself. I mean, there was that 1970s Monster Squad TV series where it had the Wolfman and the other Universal monsters that last, I think, 13 episodes or whatever. And I don't know the tie-in between the two, but this one, your version is the one that sticks out for all of us. When you sit there and people like Danny and then people that travel states across, and then going to London and seeing multiple generations just growing with you with the franchise. And I'm calling it a franchise because it's a fan-based franchise. It's not just one movie. I mean, like you said, people made the t-shirts, people made their own memorabilia, people created their own fan fiction and fan art for this film that they loved so much, that it's a fan-based franchise in that regard. What does that say to you? And then Ryan touches upon it in a documentary. He's like, what are you talking about? The movie that we made 19, 20 some odd years ago, people care now. And then Ashley was 5, so like talking to Ashley as an adult now, it's a different situation because she was what, 6, 7 at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we shot the movie when she was 5 and it came out when she was 6 or something. And no, I mean, that's that interesting kind of I don't know, did I interrupt your report? Like you were?
No. I'm just like going with it. Like, how does that make you feel after all this time, and like, what does it do for you personally?
It's a great question. It's the question, and I don't know if I have the correct words to answer it with justice. And I think it's interesting because you mentioned producer on it. I directed it. I put the shoot together, and I'm in it. I'm in it way too much. I fought with Henry on that a lot, and he's like, "Dude, you're the leader of the Monster Squad, which is this doc's about. You have to be." And I know, but I didn't want this doc to be like super Andre centric. I wanted to be about the other people and the impact and the fan stories. But you have to be in there somewhere and tell some of the story. I got asked that question, like, hey, we see you and we get everybody's story of the impact of what this kind of whole experience, including the movie they made and the experience after and the resurgence of what it means to all them. But we don't get your answer to that question. And that was actually by Phil Noble Jr. from Fangoria. I was like, damn it, Phil, that's a really good question. And I'm not prepared except to say that the documentary is my response. That's the best I can come up with. I don't know how to describe, I fancy myself halfway creative and I can write some good stuff. And, there's a great line in Contact when Jodie Foster, Ellie's character, goes, they should have sent a poet, to describe, what she's experiencing. And I think I can write, but I don't think I'm the poet or the writer to express really what it is. It's almost indescribable. It's certainly an intangible yet tangible feeling. And I think the only way to reconcile what was going on over these last few years is I'm task oriented, or I'm focus driven, or task mode. And I think I went into task mode to try to express what this whole dynamic means to me personally. And so I think I just put a whole bunch of people in a crew together to try to make a movie to explain that. And I hope that suffices as an answer. And if you enjoy the doc, then maybe you'll get that. I just don't know how to describe it. I without sounding really, really lame.
It's not lame because it's a part of who you are and a part of your existence. And just the fan service to you. I mean, I know you laughed at me the first time we talked for Baby Frankenstein And I was just like, oh yeah, half my class was screaming Wolfman's Got Nards. They're like, half the class, whatever. Nobody saw the movie. But there were, there were enough kids in the class that saw it that knew the line.
Right.
Okay.
And that's the interesting dynamic of what endures on it. And that's what I love the story. I was just doing a podcast right before you and I, got together tonight, and, I had talked to these cats before, and he was like, no, man, remember I was talking about the playground and, Monster Squad ruled, and like, we all knew it. I was like, there's no way. I was like, a playground? It was like, okay, maybe you knew it. There's no way. He's like, no, man. It was a ton of us. Like, Monster Squad ruled our neighborhood and the playground for that year. And like, we competed with other groups, and like, that was the movie we talked about. And then, so we talked about it tonight, earlier on their show. And I was like, he was like, no, man, my whole playground, like, I know like 5 of those guys still. It's like, we're all still friends. And then like, they lost their mind when you were on our show. And I was like, well, let's go to the playground and hang out with those guys and just, like, shoot the shit, and have some wings or something. And he was like, I said, I'm there, man. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's just hang out with these kids. I mean, not the kids in the school, but like the kids that are grown up now, and, and reminisce and see what they think, because I'm going to get just as much a kick out of their reaction and me being involved in something that they really, really dug than they are about hanging out with me. I bet you I get more out of it than they do.
I dig it, man. Okay. I have to ask you this now.
Yeah.
Because we got to leave this on a high note.
Okay.
We got sad because of Brent. We got happy. We got emotional. And now you're leaving us with a high note of how important all this is to you. So Star Trek has Trekkies and Trekkers. All right. Firefly has the brown coats, and each subdivision of fandom has their own thing. What are the fans of the Monster Squad called?
They're in the goddamn club.
Another brilliant line in the movie. And we're in the goddamn club. I dig it, man.
I think that's it. I think I don't think they need a pronoun. I think it's like, I'm in the goddamn club. And if you know what that means, then you're in too. And if you don't, you're not in yet.
Well, then I'm in the goddamn club since 1987. Yeah. Andre Gower, where can we find you on social media, man, if we want to connect with you?
Oh, that would be awesome. On Twitter, it's at Andre Gower. On Instagram, it's at Andre Gower Official. And please follow Wolfman's Got Nards. The movie handles are at The Squad Doc on both of those. And also thesquaddoc.com if you're just like a regular interweb user and type in an address box. Please follow updates, news, more stuff. There's a YouTube channel for the Squad Doc also that we're getting ready to post some new stuff on, and some cool fun things. We're also going to go out and we're going to have a cool little thing where follow me so you can look for the call to action. I want you to send me your squad story at some point. So, you can Instagram me or put it on Twitter, take a little 30 second, 1 minute video to tell me what your story is. And I'm going to try to repost that and put that on the YouTube channel and just share everybody's story. Cause that was something that was very important to me from the very beginning of this project. Cause I can't put everybody in the documentary. And I wish I could. I just can't, because there's too many of you. But I want to try to find some way to connect and have you be a part of it all, whether that's you pre-ordering Wolfman's Got Nards on iTunes, or ordering the Blu-ray on Amazon, or just queuing it up on your your VOD platform of choice, whether you're on Dish Network or Comcast or Fios, whatever you get. There's about 24 of them that drops on the 27th. So please let me know where you're getting it, if you want to get it, if you're renting it, if you're downloading it, if you're buying it. I want to hear from you and tell me your story, and keep an eye out for that. But I certainly appreciate everybody out there that's listening to this, that gives a rip. I appreciate RC and his show for having me back on and talking about fun stuff and letting me rant and go off on tangents.
Well, it's always fun, man. We became fast friends real quick last time we talked. I'm glad we get to continue this going forward. We still got to grab those beers soon, man. We're going to be heading into the orange tier soon here in Orange County. So
That's
it's apropos, and we've
That's
become
right.
the second biggest brewery county from San Diego.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have to do that, and so we'll connect. And it's my world's been a little crazy the last month or so, and then once that dies down a little bit, and then but everybody support RC and his show and the stuff that he writes about, and the site, and support all the other guests that he has on, because you guys are the only reason we get to do what we do, and some of us recognize that.
Well, if you guys didn't create anything, we'd have nothing to write or talk about.
Well, that's true. So maybe it's a good, nice symbiotic relationship. We'll go with that.
There you go, my man. So Wolfman's Got Nards out on VOD, DVD, Blu-ray, satellite, on your Apple Watch, whatever. Tuesday, October 27th. It's a fantastic documentary. I can't say enough about it, and I can't say even more because I'll give away too many spoilers, and that's the worst part about it.
Well, feel free. I'll come back after it releases. If you want to talk about particular things, I'll come back anytime, man.
You got it, man. All right. Thank you, Andre Gower. It's been a pleasure as always.
Awesome. Thanks again.